It's 1965, and the Cold War verges on nuclear conflict. The Soviet Union has escalated tensions, threatening the West with annihilation. Patrolling the waters a few miles outside Washington, D.C., USS Wright comes to life as vessel and crew prepare for the unthinkable. Originally an aircraft carrier, this ship has been transformed. Its vast flight deck, once filled with fighter jets ready for combat, now hosts a forest of antennae and satellite dishes. These instruments of communication have replaced the roar of jet engines with the silent buzz of signals bouncing across the globe. A helicopter approaches, cutting through the sky with urgency. It lands smoothly on the deck, now cleared of any aircraft, but fully equipped for its new role. Out steps President John F. Kennedy, immediately greeted by the ship's commanding officer. Together, they move briskly inside, descending into the bowels of the USS Wright. In the heart of the ship, a secure room houses a bank of color-coded telephones. Each one is a direct link to a different branch of the U.S. defense network, from the Pentagon to missile silos scattered across the country. This array of phones stands ready to orchestrate a unified response to any threat. Even deeper, in the bowels of the Emergency Operations Center, there's a reinforced room shrouded in secrecy, requiring a top-secret key code to enter. Before there were doomsday planes, there were doomsday ships, created to ride out nuclear apocalypse. USS Wright was ready to do just that. With the creation of nuclear weapons at the end of World War II, the world changed forever, and soon, nations around the globe began to plan for the unthinkable, ensuring the continuity of government operations and the survival of critical figures in the case of nuclear Armageddon. For the United States, maintaining national security in the nuclear age required a sophisticated strategy. This approach was anchored in a triad of command posts: airborne, ground-based, and sea-based. Each element operated independently, yet was intricately linked to the others. Communications were a vital part of the strategic plan, ensuring uninterrupted contact for national security among 4 critical command posts. This network included 2 land-based command centers, one located within the Pentagon, another in a military bunker in Pennsylvania, and an airborne command post operated by the U.S. Air Force. However, the least publicly known yet wildly interesting component of this strategy was the National Emergency Command Post Afloat, or NECPA. For this, the Navy wanted sea-based ships set to be on constant alert and ready to assume the role of a floating White House, Pentagon equivalents, and mobile bunkers, ensuring the sea's governance and strategic military command even in the direst of times. For this, the models had to have endless communication systems, weapons, facilities, and survival capabilities installed by the best engineers and designers America had to offer. The first NECPA command ship, CC-1, was USS Northampton, codenamed Sea Ruler. Originally a heavy cruiser commissioned right after World War II, the ship was adapted and reclassified for her new role and based in Norfolk, Virginia, and within easy reach of the capital. A year after the Northampton began its NECPA role, the time came for the Navy to add a second floating White House to the fleet, and Navy top brass chose USS Wright, a Saipan-class light aircraft carrier commissioned in 1947. Throughout her initial career, USS Wright acted as a qualification carrier for training pilots, served the U.S. Sixth Fleet as the flagship for Carrier Division 14, engaged in NATO exercises with other members, most notably the British Royal Navy, and even operated off Korea and Okinawa with the 7th Fleet in the Pacific. However, in 1954, she departed Japanese waters and headed toward the west coast of the U.S., where she was decommissioned and assigned to the Pacific Reserve Fleet. But in 1962, she got the ultimate chance at a new life, when she was towed to Washington State's Puget Sound Naval Shipyard for conversion. And while her predecessor, Northampton, was only minimally upgraded for her NECPA duties since she was already due for replacement, the changes on Wright would be done with unparalleled efficiency and depth. According to official records, this extensive overhaul resulted in, quote, the most sophisticated communications platform ever placed at sea. For over a year, hundreds of workers secretly performed extreme alterations to the ship in both function and appearance. Reclassified as CC-2, USS Wright, codenamed Zenith, was recommissioned on May 11, 1963, in the midst of the Cold War, as the most important part of the National Emergency Command Post afloat. USS Wright was transformed into the ultimate doomsday vessel within a year. a significant portion of what was once the hangar deck space was redesigned into special command spaces and the extensive electronic equipment they required. And the flight deck, instead of aircraft, was now dominated by aerials, the tallest being a set of 156-foot masts. Equipped with sophisticated troposcatter antenna arrays, the largest and most powerful transmitting antenna systems ever installed on a U.S. Navy ship. A press release issued by the branch soon after Zenith entered service stated, quote, "The Wright has the most extensive communications facilities ever put aboard a ship. Its voice of command can be heard by ships, aircraft, and stations throughout the world." Within the ship was a specialized room devoted solely to teletype machines, each capable of rapidly receiving messages at a rate of 100 words per minute, integral to the efficient exchange and processing of command data. Beyond these machines, the ship had the latest communications technology, including over 40 tons of gear and 60 transmitters and receivers, matching the capabilities of large shore-based communication stations. According to the Navy, this state-of-the-art communication system allowed USS Wright to set the world record for the fastest around-the-world message, taking just 0.8 of a second. However, the true power of USS Wright lay in her nuclear contingency capabilities. In case of a nuclear emergency, the President of the United States and their closest aides would be escorted by the Marine Corps into helicopters and taken into one of the two NECPA ships. Upon their arrival, Wright would transform into a fortress at sea. Its decks, equipped with advanced air filters, would close off, and powerful saltwater systems would cleanse the ship of any nuclear contamination. Once inside, whatever was left of the United States government and Army branches would get to work below Wright's deck, where a fully equipped operations center laid, with working spaces for up to 1,000 personnel, with rooms for war planning, charts and graphics, briefings and conferences, and more. Additionally, 17 officers and 22 enlisted personnel from the Joint Chiefs of Staff would also board to manage the floating White House in an emergency. These numbers could increase to cope with different warfare scenarios. Meanwhile, the President was provided with an elaborate stateroom akin to the Oval Office, equipped with, according to writer Garrett M. Graff, quote, "nearly a dozen different color-coded telephones linked to various parts of the country's military command structure." The ship's actual armament was relatively simple. Northampton had a single aft turret, while Wright had several 40mm anti-aircraft guns. However, some rumors state that they also retained their anti-submarine warfare sensors. Under the motto Vox Imperii, or Voice of the Leaders, headed by the President, USS Wright would use all its features and advanced antenna arrays to contact 3 specialized shore facilities, ensuring a continuous link with the remaining U.S. military forces. If those stations happened to be destroyed by the enemy, Wright had a backup plan that consisted of deploying up to 3 unmanned QH-43 Husky helicopters, a unique modified version that could lift a low-frequency antenna over 2 miles into the air, which would then allow communication with Navy submarines around the globe. The operating principle behind National Emergency Command Post Afloat called for one of the TWP models to be at sea at all times, with them rotating every fortnight. In practice, the NECPA ship in active service would patrol around the eastern coast, operating within reasonable reach from the capital or close to wherever the President was. For the next 6 years, USS Wright operated out of Norfolk, Virginia, with regular overhauls that continually improved her capabilities. Both Presidents John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson spent nights aboard the Doomsday vessels during training exercises. After an overnight stay in Northampton in 1966, the latter wrote to the ship's commander regarding the program's importance, quote, "It was a great pleasure to have this opportunity to visit with you and your crew, and to see firsthand one of the finest ships and the best Navy the world has ever known. You are performing a role vital to our nation's defense, and your Commander-in-Chief is proud of you, your crew, and your ship." In mid-April 1967, USS Wright laid anchor off the coast of Uruguay, providing a worldwide state-of-the-art communications capability in support of President Johnson's attendance at the Latin American Summit Conference in Punta del Este. A year later, in May 1968, when the Guadalcanal assault ship underwent a major malfunction and was dead in the water miles south of Norfolk, Wright and her crew tracked, located, and towed the vessel nearly half the trek back before other ships arrived to help. In February 1968, when Pueblo, an American Navy intelligence ship crewed by scientists, was attacked and captured by North Korean forces, a major Cold War confrontation between the two nations ensued. With this, USS Wright, at the time in Florida, was hurriedly recalled to Norfolk to be closer to President Johnson and stood on alert as the situation de-escalated. But despite several near confrontations, a major nuclear war never came. While this was good luck for the world, it was not so for the NECPA program. Initially in their service, the Doomsday NECPA ships were the Pentagon's first choice for a nuclear strike scenario, where the survival of the president, their family, and their most important staff was paramount. Other options, like facilities on land, could easily fall target to a direct strike, while an airborne command post could only have a limited amount of time in the air before it would have to land. But the powerful floating White House could operate for weeks in the sea and offered plenty more space. Also, at the time, the Soviet Navy was barely just building up its blue water capabilities, and the United States Navy still reigned in the waters. However, in a matter of a few years, the relentless advancement of military technology posed a new challenge. At the time Northampton was first commissioned, the atomic bombs of the immediate post-war period were much less potent than those developed and tested in the late 1960s. Then, both sides of the war perfected their use of intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, and these powerful new weapons had more destructive capabilities, reducing warning time to 15 minutes. As the end of the decade approached, advancements in Soviet spy satellites meant that the NECPA ships were no longer safe from prying enemy eyes. Whether because of satellites or sneaky shadow submarines, it became clear to the Pentagon that every minimal movement could be tracked, becoming a much easier target. And when, on April 17, 1967, the Strategic Air Command, for the first time ever, successfully used EC-135 aircraft to launch an unmanned ICBM from its silo, this feat was a larger-than-life sign that the future of the Doomsday Command Post would be airborne. The writing for Northampton and Wright was on the wall. In the mid-1960s, the United States government considered converting the USS Triton, or a fellow Saipan-class ship like Wright, into a third NECPA model. Due to the advent of more modern technology, the National Emergency Command Post Afloat project was canceled, and the Doomsday ships, which served the United States from 1962 until 1970, were decommissioned by the United States Navy. The Pentagon's airborne prediction was correct, and today, the job of these two now long bygone ships is undertaken primarily by the U.S. Air Force's fleet of E-4B aircraft. Referred to as Doomsday planes, just like their waterborne cousins, the aircraft serve as an airborne command post that offers the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense a platform, if need be, to initiate a nuclear strike. And just like the NECPA ships, the models are equipped to support a range of other major military operations, or respond to other events like large-scale natural disasters. In service since the 1970s, the E-4B is now in the early stages of being replaced by a new program. While the model is most likely also to be based on the iconic Boeing 747 airframe, new technology, not known to civilians yet, may protect the American president better than NECPA ever could.